Today we're going to talk some more about Greek and Latin roots, specifically micro, mile, mono, mort, and multi, and all the words that go with that. Let's start with micro. It comes from the Greek meaning small, but it can also mean 1/1,000,000th. But even though there are two different meanings, they are pretty related. After all, if something is 1/1,000,000th of something else, that's pretty small, right? It's just that micro doesn't always refer to specific measurements. So let's start with the word microscope. You know that scope means to look at, so it makes sense that a microscope is something you use to look at something small. And in most cases, micro does mean small. Microchip, microanalysis, microeconomics even. You might not know the specific meaning of those words, but you should know that micro there means small or taking things down to the smallest level. But in other cases, the word cell micro does have a specific measurement. So for example, the word microbar. Now, first you need to know what a bar is, and it's not just a metal rod or something like that. In this case, it's a unit of pressure. So a microbar, while it does indicate a very small level of pressure, thus micro, it has a specific measurement, and it means 1/1,000,000th of a bar. One more thing while we're talking about micro. A micrometer is not a unit of measurement, meaning 1/1,000,000th of a meter. It's actually an instrument for measuring tiny distances or thicknesses, and it's really used for scientific purposes. You wouldn't use a micrometer to measure the length of your pencil tip as you sit at your desk. But if you were an engineer in a factory, you might use a micrometer to make sure the pencil leads in the pencils you were making were all the same size. It's just not something that you use on a regular basis unless you were doing something scientific. So you wouldn't say something like, the anthill was only a few micrometers away, but it seemed like a mile to the insect. It just doesn't make sense because a micrometer is not a unit of distance. I guess now it's one more thing when we look back at micro. If you think about all the words we just talked about, they're all nouns. They represent a person, place, thing, or idea. Microscope, microanalysis, microchip, microeconomics, microbar, micrometer. Now, of course, you can make some of them adjectives. For example, you might use a microscope, which is a noun, to look at something microscopic, which is an adjective. Now let's look at mil and milli, because those are measures of distances. This root comes from Latin, meaning 1,000 or a thousandth part. There are a lot of words that incorporate M-I-L-L-I or M-I-L-L-E and related word cells: millionaire, millimeter, milliliter, millipede. The word million, for example, literally means 1,000 thousands. You can see when that's written out. You start with the 1 and then add 3 zeros for 1,000, and then you want another 1,000, so you add 3 more zeros, and there you have a million. Be careful though, when you have the Latin root mil ending in an I, so M-I-L-L-I, it often means 1,000th, not 1,000, as it does in million. Fun with English, huh? So a millimeter, M-I-L-L-I-M-E-T-E-R, is 1,000th of a meter, not 1,000 meters, because that's a kilometer. A milligram is 1,000th of a gram because a kilogram is 1,000 grams. And that can be a little confusing because kilo does mean thousand, but it comes from the Greek. But not always. Millipede, M-I-L-L-I-P-E-D-E, has an I in it. And it's simply a bug with a lot of legs, although not 1,000 and not 1,000th of a leg. We know that PEDE means legs, but that's just what the bug is called, so it can be a little bit confusing. Now, if the word cell mill ends in E, so M-I-L-L-E, it means thousand. So look at some other words. Millennium, for example, has an E at the end of its word cell, M-I-L-L-E, and that means 1,000, and we already know that EN means years, so millennium means 1,000 years. Next up, mon or mono. It means one, or by yourself, alone, and it comes from the Greek. Have you ever played the game Monopoly? What does that word really mean? Its official meaning is one person, or company, or government, having total control over a business or industry. The Greek ending, poly, means many. So a monopoly is one person or entity having control over many. And that's the goal of the game, right? For one person to rule the entire board and to control all the properties and money? For example, in 1999, a judge ruled that Microsoft was a monopoly and its business practices did not allow other companies to effectively compete in the computer industry. But the word monopoly can also mean a real or perceived control of something. For example, it's really hard to work with Seth because he thinks he has a monopoly on creative ideas for the project. That means Seth thinks he's the only one who has good ideas and wants to do everything his way. A monopoly is a noun, but we can also make it an adjective. Seth's monopolistic attitude towards us and the project annoyed us, or his controlling attitude annoyed us. Other mon words: monocle, it means an eyeglass for one eye, sort of like Mr. Peanut for Planters Peanuts. Here's some other words: monochromatic, one color; monarchy, government of one ruler; monogamy, practice of being married to one person; monologue, one person giving a speech to an audience. On this last one, don't forget that a monologue is different from a soliloquy, because with a soliloquy, the speaker is talking to himself or herself. Phew, that's a lot. Now we're up to mort. It means dead or to die. So if we are mortal, it means that someday we will die. Now, if you're reading a lot of vampire books, you know that vampires are generally immortal. And since we know that im means not, and mort means death, and al means having that quality, immortal means not having the quality of death or not capable of dying. By the way, mortal and immortal can be both nouns and adjectives depending on how they are used. In the sentence, our lives are mortal, mortal is an adjective because it's describing our lives. But in the sentence, in twilight, Edward loves Bella, who is a mortal, mortal is a noun. But there's another noun that goes with this: mortality. It means the idea of life having an end at some point. And immortality is also a noun that's an idea. Edward contemplates his own immortality when thinking about his love for Bella. Here's some more on mort. When people die, they are often taken to a funeral home or a mortuary. Because mort means death and airy means place for, it's not really a place of death because people aren't dying there, but it's a place where the dead are taken care of. Not everything is a literal translation from the language it comes from, but when taken in context, it will help you determine the meaning. For example, look at this sentence. The mortician respectfully prepared Susan's grandmother's body for burial. Now, mort means death, and ischen means person who does something. But we know here mortician is not a person who died to prepare the body. It must be somebody who works with the bodies of people who have died. Last one this week, mult and multi. It means many or many more than. Let's start with the word multilateral. It means many sides. Although be careful, because this usually means many sides to an issue or many perspectives on an issue, rather than a physical object with physical sides. Multilingual means speaking many languages. And by the way, taking a few foreign language classes does not make you multilingual. You need to be fluent or close to it before you can consider yourself bilingual or multilingual if it's more languages. And look at each of these words. They all end in al. A part of speech does that usually point to? An adjective. Other words that include mult: multiply, so make many times; multitude, a great number, but a collective noun, not necessarily a specific number. Thanks for watching. Try to use these new words in your writing and look out for them in your reading as well. Till next time.